7/22/19 was my last official coaching session after, that was my 3-year contract. That was up with Steve. And he folded this up and he handed it to me. And, he's like, put it in a safe place, take really good care of it. And I was like, you put it in a safe place and take really good care of it, because I'm coming back when the time is right. So I haven't seen this in a long time. It just brings back so many memories. One of the cool things when you go to visit Steve, and the flag that he flies this on is really high, so you can see it from the driveway. If you fly into Phoenix Airport, the way you get to Steve's house, you have to kind of come back around a canal, so you can, from the highway, see Steve's house. You can actually see the murals. And I just remember every time I was pulling up, and you'd make that curve, and this thing was flying, and I was like, there's going to be some epic shit happening today in that office, for sure. So, Steve, thank you for letting me hang out with her a little bit. I'll let you hold her. Okay, so I'll get right into it. So, just quick recap, the 3 things we talked about. You guys, I think it's pretty straightforward. Figure out what you really want. Stop deferring. Stop quitting. Do epic shit. Voluntary discomfort, right? The 4th and final thing is really, I think, it's the teaching, if there is such a thing as the teaching, of my work with Steve. And it's, I'm going to word it awkwardly on purpose. You cannot outdo who you are being. Just sit with that for a minute. It's so powerful. You cannot outdo who you are being. And said another way, man's chief delusion is that there is a cause, any cause, outside of his or her consciousness. Biggest thing. So, what does that mean practically? Let's break it down, so it's not some esoteric. This is not magical or mystical or spiritual, even though it is all of that. Let's assume that consciousness had a scale, right? And it's a scale of 1 to 10. I'm making this up. This is not true. And let's assume that Steve, he struggles a little bit. He's not the brightest, but he works hard. He's at like a level 5 consciousness, right? 10 being the highest. So when Steve is at a level 5 consciousness, hear this about you, about each of you. The only thing that's accessible to Steve in the physical world, the material world, the spiritual world, the nether world, is things that are at that level 5 consciousness or below. Steve's desire to have something that sits above his level of consciousness is that. It's a desire. There's a longing for it. There's an anxiety of whether or not I'll get it. When you get those feelings, just know, yes, you're going to have to go out there and do work. That's a given. Anybody who knows me, I'm a big proponent of working. But the work's got to start here. You want that thing that's at level 7, level 8, level 9, peace of mind, being okay with where you are. Abundance, not money, abundance. If that's sitting at level 7, 8, or 9, and you're a level 5 human being, that shit's not accessible to you. It's not. Go to all the courses, do all the work 90 hours a week, 100 hours a week. It is just not, the vibrational match is just not there for you to ever experience it. Like, that's how powerful and profound this is. So when we talk about go and work inside, our jobs in this incarnation, again, I'm not getting religious or even practically philosophical with anyone. The thing you want to experience, it already exists. It already exists at a plane. Your job is to raise your level of consciousness to get to that plane, and then that shit will just magically show up, and you'll be like, where did this come from? And you have all had that experience, where there's something that you really wanted for a long time, and you just didn't know how to get it, and then you went and did something, worked on yourself, you forgot about that thing, and then all of a sudden it was like right there. Every single one of you has had that experience. It felt effortless, magical, a little magical, right? So That's a real thing. This is true for all of it. So what does that mean? So here's the example I'll give you. This is one of my personal favorites because it's probably been one of the ones where I've had the most growth. Sitting with Steve, when I started with him, as I mentioned before, I was the president of a company, a fairly large company. I was the CEO of a second company. And Steve and I said, Steve's like, you don't like what you do. We got to fix that. So we can do two things. Either you're going to find a way to learn what you love to learn to love what you're doing, or, his words, we're going to burn it all down. And this is in the book. And I'm just like, this guy's fucking crazy. And so we actually did. I was like, all right, well, it's a good gig. Let me try to learn to love it. So we worked on a few things. You'll remember the conversations I had with the people. At the end of the day, the work I was doing, even though it was great companies, I was a hired CEO. It was not my company. It was not built in my ethos. And I just couldn't get to a place where it was right for me. And so I'm like, shit, Steve, I think it's option B. I'm like, but Steve, I'm not an entrepreneur. Like, literally, I said that. And I was like, I went to an Ivy League school, right? Yeah, I tested really well. I got in. And then I went and found a job at the most prestigious investment bank, right? I interviewed well. I got in. And then when I was there, I, crushed it. But it sounds like all these amazing accomplishments. It's a fucking blueprint. Anybody can do it. There's no creativity in it, right? I just had to, work hard and get in a place where I could do those things. But I had never taken the risk of really betting on. I knew I could perform in those jobs. I had never taken that level of a risk on betting on myself to see what I could create. That was fucking scary. And I still remember sitting there in Steve's office, and I'm like, fuck it, Steve, let's do this. And I was like, I'm in. And he said to me, he made me read my document, and there's nothing in my document about me being an entrepreneur. He's like, you see the problem? Seriously, do you see the problem? You cannot go build a successful company until you already expect. You have to believe that you're an entrepreneur because you know who builds companies? Entrepreneurs build companies. You have to believe you're an author before you ever write that first book because you know who writes books? Authors write books. It's fucking backwards. And it's powerful. So I remember sitting there, one of my I am statements, which is just like, I remember when I first started saying it, it felt like, you charlatan. You lie to yourself in the mirror. I'd be like, I'm an exceptional entrepreneur. I ain't never started shit. I still remember those days. But I sat with it, and I got to the very place, and I was like, yeah, I have not started think, but have I created? Entrepreneurship is simply a journey of creating, and giving value. I've done that in other places in my life, as a friend, as a father, as a husband, so I was like, okay, it's the same energy. I know how to do that. And it wasn't until I remember the day it fucking clicked for me when I looked in the mirror and I was like, I am an exceptionally successful entrepreneur, and there was zero resistance. Company got created that day. The company got created that day. It took time because everything in nature has a gestation period. It took time for it to show up in this world where I can point to it and tell you, here's what we do. But I know that day when I said that and I felt it, I'm like, holy shit, I'm a fucking successful entrepreneur. I just haven't figured out what I'm building yet. Changed everything. We had this conversation in February. I had this moment of kind of me saying, we had this conversation in December. I had this moment of me looking in the mirror and saying, okay, I'm an entrepreneur, just clicking. The next week, I had a flight from New York to Dubai. I was running a company in UAE. It was a 14-hour flight, and I always flew the same airlines. They knew I was coming. I love Turkish coffee. They would always make sure they have lots of Turkish coffee for me. For a 14-hour flight, I didn't sleep. I had a piece of paper. I literally wrote out what I was building, the first 3 people I was going to hire, the first 4 companies I was going to buy, what the name of the firm was going to be. I chose Asgard, Just I love mythology, and I love symbolism, and I love the hero's journey, and I was like, we're going to be a bunch of fucking Vikings out there going, ripping shit up. It's going to be epic, right? But so why do I share that? Simply to say, as you go out here, and you'll hear this message all over from a lot of the self-help guru folks, and it's just like hustle and grind, hustle and grind, hustle and grind. Yes, that's the potatoes and the vegetables. That's not the steak. That's a given. You have to work hard at the things that you want to achieve in life. But before you get to the place where you start doing things, start being it. And I'm not sure what that looks like. I'm not here to give you a process on how you do that. I think this entire this conversation is about being. But that's the last thing I'll leave you with, is that just always remember that if your consciousness is abundance, it is impossible for you to feel scarcity. And if your mindset is that of scarcity, abundance will never be in your reach till you fix that. Everything else is just bullshit. All right? That's all I got. All right, cheers.